waking up kind of in this hospital bed the next morning, and my mother being by my side, and her actually telling me in a very loving way that she didn't want me to feel guilty about not coming home. She told me she was basically letting me know that she didn't blame me for this, and that I shouldn't blame myself, and being extremely loving and letting me know that we're going to get through this together. So, which is a great relief to me. But I felt very, very bad myself, and felt bad for my mother. And it's funny because for the first couple of months I was in the hospital, I actually didn't know that I was not going to be able to walk again, and I didn't know that I was going to be paralyzed for the rest of my life. So I actually thought that I would leave the hospital and I would just have to make it up somehow. I would have to do extra work around the house, or I would have to, that some way I could make it up to her, and I would start coming home on time. But my mother took it very well. Actually, though, and I go into this in great detail in the book. A couple of years later, after I got back, we started to have some problems because there was anger that she had that she never dealt with, and it came up kind of years later in like arguments that we would have and discussions that we would have. So she kind of held down all this anger for a couple of years, and then later on it kind of exploded. Same thing with my sister. My sister held down all this anger because they both kind of had to do things that they never really wanted to do. For several months, they had to take care of me in a way that neither of them ever really wanted to. It was a real kind of burden for their life. There were times my sister wanted to go party with friends, but couldn't because someone had to stay home with me and make sure that, that I could actually feed myself and stuff. So it was, at the time, it was, my relationship with my mother was good, but years later, it kind of grew difficult. But from the beginning, she was very loving, very, very forgiving. Yeah.
Did you ever, contact the teacher that when at the school where your mother took you out?
No. So this is a good question, too. Did I ever contact the teacher at the school where my mother kicked me out from? I never did, It was one of those things you're too young to really think to yourself, hey, I wish I could, I should go back and probably tell that teacher that, or apologize and say, hey, I'm sorry I was such a disruptive kid. But the reality was that I didn't know how to contact that teacher. I still don't even know what that teacher's name was. I want to say it was like Miss Milligan or something like that, but I had no way of knowing how to find that teacher. Now, it's funny you should mention that, because now that I'm like a healthy adult, there are so many teachers that I wish I could go back and say, hey, because even after my accident, I would still go on to be a kid in a wheelchair in high school and in middle school who was disruptive and would still like to talk in class and pass notes to girls and stuff in class, and I was still kind of a disruptive kid even after that. And there are teachers who I wish today I could go back and say, hey, I understand what you were going through now, because I'm actually a teacher myself and having to deal with it on a daily basis. And so there were teachers today I wish I could go back, but I never was able to go back to that 4th grade teacher. I hope that she understands. So I think now, as a teacher myself, I understand. Students have full, rich lives. They don't mean to be, I'm sure that no student in here is mean-spirited and disruptive because they want to bring harm to that teacher or what have you. But no, I never got to go back and talk to her. I wish I could. I'm sure she understands. Yeah. How did my mom find out? Okay. So great question. My dad had died by that time. My dad died when I was 6 years old. He was, it was believed, and my mother believes this strong. My dad was kind of a criminal. He was a drug dealer also. And my mother believes that my dad died because he was going to testify against some other people in his crew, and so she believes that they killed him before he could, because his death was kind of mysterious. So my dad never got to find out. But my mother actually found out. I told you my best friend Eric. We were outside his apartment, and once they realized what happened, Eric ran upstairs, had his mother call 911, and then his mother, right after calling 911, called my mother. his mother and my mother were close too. And so basically, my mother rushed into a cab and went to the hospital. But that's how she found out. Yes.
In your book, you talk about the Joneses. You go to in the summertime.
Yes.
What do you think you must have been like if you never met the Joneses?
Okay. So, Honey is alluding to a very interesting chapter in my life, which I'll never forget. When I was a kid, there was a very popular program, and it still goes on today, called the Fresh Air Fund. Does anybody know that? Do you have it out here, the Fresh Air Fund? It's basically a program where inner city kids are paired up with wealthier families in like upstate New York. And the idea behind it is that you get away for a couple of weeks and you go live with this kind of wealthy family or this very kind family who wants to take in, they volunteer to take in inner city kids and bring them out to the country to live in their homes for a certain amount of time. And so when I was a kid, my mother enrolled me in the Fresh Air Fund, and my sister and I would go live with this very wealthy white family that I called the Joneses. I didn't even remember their real name, so I called them the Joneses in the book. But really, it changed my life in a certain way in that I had no idea that like there was this beauty and nature out there. My life as a kid was all projects, kind of broken basketball courts, a kind of an ugly slum life. And this family that I went to go stay with led this beautiful life. They had a beautiful 3-story house out in upstate New York. They had a house on the lake also, where like I would go and I could just go and sit in a canoe. They would let me, take the canoe out on the lake, and I would just spend hours out in the lake in this canoe. I had all these wonderful experiences out there that I think a lot of kids my age and in my neighborhood weren't able to have. And so it showed me like a whole kind of other life. And I think to this day that it's very possible that my love of nature and the reason why I love Oregon so much comes from the fact that I got to spend that time with that family out there and see what a beautiful, peaceful life that is. I'm not sure what my life would have been like. I'm sure it would have been a lot less. Like I think I would have. I feel like I grew so much as a kid from that experience with the Joneses that to this day, I still believe that if I'm ever lucky enough to have such a situation myself, like a house in a lake, I would also sign up to do such a thing. But I think that that experience just made me a very richer person. It made me more diverse. It made me able to see that there's something outside of this kind of slum life that I live that I could strive for. It gave me something to believe in, something more than just living in the projects with, crack addicts and what have you. It led me to believe that I could achieve something else.